You're listening to Sox in the Basement, a production of the Broadcast Basement Limited, where every show is 30 minutes of good and comes from a basement bar on the south side of Chicago. Pull up a stool, pour a cold one, and join us right now for Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always at soxinthebasement.com. So I know I promised video to kick off this episode of Sox in the Basement, and
You did.
I have kind of a legitimate reason why we're not doing it, and some sad news.
You do.
And some things that I'm kind of dealing with. And those of you who have followed me over the years, especially if you listen to me back on the radio, might have heard of this gentleman who would jump on every once in a while when I was doing the radio. Just kind of help me out. He's I won't even call him a really good friend. He was like a brother. And my brother Joe Signorelli, otherwise known as Minnesota Joe, passed away this week. And it was a very shocking moment yesterday when I got the phone call telling me that somebody who's one of my best friends in the whole world had passed on. And I still am in a lot of shock, but I didn't want to not do the show. But there was no way I was going to get video up. And there was just no way that I could do anything else except for the bare minimum. Yesterday and today and this weekend will probably be a blur, and I'll probably not do anything that exciting for the next couple of days until I've gotten through this. But I did want to mention him because, I've talked about him before on this show. I've talked about him because he is from Minnesota, and he's a Twins fan. In fact, in the bar here, on the 9-foot homemade oak bar, I came down yesterday after I got the news. And I came down yesterday and looked around the bar, and there's a minimum of 4 pictures of him down here. If you've ever seen, video on the network of me standing at the bar with the microphone, there is a picture, actually, of me that he gave me, and you'll see it when we start doing a YouTube thing if you've never checked out any of the other shows and the video of them, of me in, a nun outfit. It was Halloween, I was dressed as a nun with the big habit, and I'm smoking a cigar, and I'm holding a cup of beer. I'm in college, okay? And he's my firstborn's godfather. In fact, he's probably the reason that she's going to be an architect. She's studying to be an architectural engineer at the University of Illinois because her Uncle Joe was an architectural engineer who studied and graduated from the University of Illinois. She couldn't even do her architecture homework yesterday because she has his books with his notes in it because he passed it on to her after he helped me move her into college just a few months ago when she went down there and started her freshman year. But this picture that sits behind me at the bar is a gift he gave her that I hang in the bar, and it says, "To Audrey, whenever you get in trouble, point to this, Uncle Joe." And it's me in a nun's outfit, drinking, with a cigar in my mouth, in college. And it's one of the prized possessions down here at the bar. There's a picture of me and Joe and our other 3 good friends. There's a 5-some that have been together for 3 decades. That are just the closest of friends, do all kinds of travel with each other, stood up in each other's weddings, that sits over the bar. There's a picture of him over my shoulder. If you see me in the videos, he's over my shoulder, and we're at the ballpark. We're at the Rate, which I think was called the Cell at the time, and it's 2006, and I'm wearing my World Championship t-shirt, and he's wearing something about the Twins, and we're at a Sox Twins game, and I remember that, distinctly, to kind of bring this back to what we talk about in this show. Joe was jealous of us. Joe is a Twins fan, was eternally jealous of the White Sox because for all of their division championships and their lack of a dysfunctional front office, we at least won a World Series in the last 20 years or so. He got his when he was a kid, right? With Kirby Puckett. We won a World Series. And he was convinced he was never going to see another one, and he didn't. But he was convinced of it. He was for all the championships, for Torrey Hunter running over our catcher at home plate, for all the moments that it felt like the Twins were getting us. He, as a Twins fan, was jealous of the White Sox because they won a World Series in 2005. That was a thing. And we went to a lot of games together. We saw Francisco Liriano throw the no-hitter against the White Sox. And sitting at our ballpark. And I remember we used to go to all Sox Twins games. He would come down or I would go up. A lot of times we would go to a game together. And we watched that game happen. I remember him laughing hysterically, how absurd it was that he got a no-hitter against the White Sox. Like he the whole time he was like, he's such a terrible pitcher. And what I learned from Joe was, here's another fan from another fan base of the same age. And I would look at the Twins and think to myself, like, oh God, I wish I was a Twins fan. Look at all the division championships they get and how they're always in it. And we're like, we have one good year and disappear for 5 or 6 or 10 or whatever it's going to be. We have no hope. And he was jealous of us, but he would sit there with the same angst over his team in our division as I had over my team. You know, and his bachelor party, I mean, his bachelor party was, I think, several days, and it was a wild party, and it was so much fun. But I remember going up there, and we went and saw Sox Twins. And I actually made ESPN, like the next morning we're watching the highlights of the game that we were at. And I barely remember the game because we were partying that weekend. We were young. And I made the highlights on ESPN because I was sitting out in the outfield of that stadium that they have now. It was like brand new. And I want to say that Przinski or Konerko hit a home run right over my head in the section. And it was a big moment in the game on the road. And I'm wearing an AJ Pierzynski World Series patch adorned road jersey in Minnesota. And the ESPN shot of me, which I did not remember even happening because that's how crazy that day was, is me just standing there with my arms out taunting the Twins fans as people were throwing half cups of beer in my direction. And I would wait every half hour while we laid in the hotel room that day following the bachelor party, laughing with my friends as we waited for the highlight to come again, because every half hour they'd replay it on ESPN when they get to the White Sox Twins game. And I'm like, here I come again, watch them throw beer at me, and everybody would laugh their butt off. So, I mean, like, you know, it's funny. I have a lot of memories of my dear friend, but a lot of them are Sox and Twins things. And a lot of the pictures down here are Sox and Twins things. And he was a hell of a baseball fan. And I just think that the most amazing thing that I take from his fandom is he showed me that another fan base could be just as angst-filled and angry at their ownership. Could be just as upset with the ridiculousness of how their team gets eliminated all the time. He saw it as, well, we're going to make the playoffs, but we're going to lose. I mean, there are text message after text message after text message of him asking me during a Sox Twins game, which team's going to screw this up? And so, like, I kind of wanted to share that today because that was something that, like, struck me this morning as I was getting ready for the show, was, like, he was the perfect example of, we always think that everything sucks for us, right? Because we're in it. This is our team. Everything sucks for us. And Joe was my reminder of every fan base feels like it sucks. Every one of them. And that the Twins fans were not doing any much better than the White Sox fans in our own division. We really are in truly the worst division of Major League Baseball, and everybody is suffering. That kind of hit me today. I remembered the way that he used to talk about baseball with me, and I just wanted to make sure I passed that along, because I don't think we ever realized that. As we're sitting here in spring and we're upset about things with our team, trust me, the Minnesota Joes of the world are upset about what's going on with the Minnesota Twins.
And rightfully so. But, you know, I knew Joe a little bit, not obviously nearly as well as you did. And he was a hell of a guy. And you know, I'm really sorry for your loss, man. And I'm not sorry for anything that Twins fans are going through, however. I never had any sympathy for that whatsoever.
That's okay. He wouldn't feel bad for you. He wouldn't feel bad for you.
No, he didn't feel bad for me one bit. Not at all. Not one bit.
He always hated the idea that AJ Pierzynski came here. That drove him nuts. That was their guy. And then he came here and he won a World Series. Like, he hated that road jersey that I had with AJ and a White Sox jersey with a World Series patch on it. I would wear that to annoy him. That drove him nuts. If we met at a game or he saw me and I put on a jersey, the first reaction would be like, like he would groan when he saw me wearing that thing. That was a point. That was a point of pain for him that AJ left. And even though he went to the Giants for 1 year before he got to the White Sox, he gets to the White Sox. He helps the White Sox win that division and win a title that the Twins were not going to win with that group, even though they came so close several times.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing too, is we're reminded of that very scarcely, because we're just so attuned to White Sox players going to other places and doing well. Like, it would shock nobody if Yohan Moncada and Tim Anderson help lead Mike Trout to the promised land this year for the Angels. Actually, it would shock everybody if the Angels made it to the World Series, but you get my point. Like, if those two contributed to it, it would be like, yeah, that figures.
Yeah.
Right?
For exterior windows, doors, patio doors, and storm doors, look no further than Window and Door Superstore of Oak Forest, where there are no high-pressure sales. They don't come to you. Instead, you go see everything that you could possibly want to see in their showroom in Oak Forest. They've been there since 1985 with an owner in showroom and then one on site with all their own installers. They don't farm out the work. That's how they do a good job each and every time, with all major brands custom made, no stock items for a perfect fit. Window and Door Superstore of Oak Forest is located 1/2 block east of 159th and Ridgeland at 6280 159th Street. See more at windowdooroakforest.com. And as we're sitting here in spring training, I have angst over some of the things that I'm seeing here. Like, I don't understand the Mike Clevinger move. And I'm not one of those people that's like, I don't understand the Mike Clevinger move because of the kind of person he is, right? Like, if he's a good pitcher, I'm kind of like, I just want to.
Is he?
That's the question.
Right?
Because I put out there, like, why do the White Sox love this guy so much on social media after it was announced that he was back? And it's a minor league deal, I believe, an NRI invite. And he's back. And somebody responded, well, he's a good pitcher. And my question is, well, is he a good pitcher? So I wanted to bring that up today as I just want to take a quick look at Mike Clevinger. I felt he was a flippable pitcher when they brought him in for the 2023 season. And he didn't perform that poorly. Like, his walks and hits per innings pitch was pretty close to being in line with what he had done before when he was a really good pitcher. Over 24 starts in 2023. He had a 4.28 ERA, but he had a lot, actually, no, that's his FIP. It's 4.28 FIP. He had a 3.77 ERA, which is right in line with some of his better years. I mean, he was a little lower in his best years, but this was not one of his bad years. And he had a 1.226 whip, and he started 24 games for you, and that he was a flippable pitcher in that season. Now, last year, he didn't do anything. Last year, his ERA was almost 7. Last year, he almost put on 2 full runners per inning with his walks and hits per innings pitched. His fielding independent pitching was almost 6.5.
Well, and he was back to being injured, which is
right.
Which is one of the big problems with him is that he started getting injury prone.
But he only started 4 games for a total of 16 innings. So the question then becomes, and you're right, he had some injury seasons there for a little bit before he got back to the Padres in 22 and pitched 23 games. And then the Sox grabbed him in 24, and he was at that time a flippable pitcher. Now the question becomes, is he healthy? And if he is healthy, the question becomes, do you think he at least reverts back to what his skill set is? Because in his non-injured years, he's effective. My question is this. There were a lot of other guys out there. I mean, I thought Jose Quintana was somebody that they should have signed a month ago, that they should have brought in to add to their pitching depth. I also am interested in whether or not the philosophy is we're going to let the young guys go, right? Brian Bannister likes to get his guys pitching. That's something that's part of his philosophy. That's something similar to what he would do out in San Francisco. He wants these guys to get out there and actually pitch. If they're ready, get them to the majors and get them pitching. So I am curious, like, does a Mike Clevinger, if he performs well in the spring, come in and get an awful lot of innings? And now you've got him and you got Perez, and you really only have 3 spots for the young guys to get into the rotation. Does he become a swingman too? He can do that as well. I'm curious to what happens with Clevinger. As much as I'm like, there were other names out there that I would have preferred to have gone and gotten. If he comes in and he's effective, I'm really curious as to how they use him, Ed.
Well, and I think some of it too, you got to remember is when you get to the non-roster invitee, when you get to these guys that are coming in, while spring training is in progress, okay? Some of it comes to, is Jose Quintana out there going, if I come into camp, I expect to be a starter. And I expect to work as a starter, and I'm going, is there some diva-ness behind what is going on with that?
But I would have made him a starter. I would have made Quintana a starter.
Well, and I understand that, but if Brian Bannister and Chris Getz want the young guys to have every chance, Mike Clevinger is a guy that even if he performs well, like you said, if he performs well in spring training, he could serve as a swingman. He doesn't necessarily have to take a spot, and he's probably just glad to be on a major league roster at this point because, again, he's injured. He's got to prove that he can stay healthy for another season to keep getting contracts. He's in that point of his career. Jose Quintana is perfectly healthy. He just hasn't been as good as he used to be. And that's a lot harder sometimes to deal with. So I don't know. It could very well be that they're looking at this, and the only reason why they bring in a Clevinger is because he sits there and goes, you know what? I don't mind pitching here. I like working with Bannister. I'll do whatever you guys want me to do if I get an opportunity. And even if he just gets to showcase for spring training, all you're doing is just, giving this guy an opportunity. And yeah, maybe it's somebody that you just let go at the end of spring training, go on your merry way, Clevy, and figure something out. Or maybe it's something where, you bring him along and he starts the season because Drew Thorpe's not 100% ready. And then you're looking to flip him, or turn him into a swingman. Or he's just insurance in case, we want to get the young guys pitching, but if they all come out and they all look bad, you want to be able to put something on the field that isn't going to be completely non-competitive, because there's getting the young guys pitching, but then there's also sending lambs to a slaughter. And if that's what they look like, if that's what the young pitchers look like, I'm guessing that Getz and Bannister would probably rather they sort out whatever they see as wrong down in the minors instead of, starting opening day and getting hammered by major league pitching, or major league hitting rather, and you're losing confidence completely. So there's a million reasons why you bring a guy like that in. Why it's him and not Quintana is the same question as to, why do you bring in Mike Tauchman and not Alex Verdugo? Why do you bring in, what is it that Chris gets? What is it that the front office sees in the guys that they choose to bring in when you have a team that should be wide open for any veteran, any rookie, anyone who can play this game to come in and steal a job, not steal, but claim a job. And, and I don't know, that's the question. There must be something that they like about Clevinger, or something that they like about him as in terms of his attitude and what he can bring to it, that they want to exploit. My guess
it could be just as simple as they're like, well, if he's healthy, he becomes that guy in 23. And if we get that, he's something.
And that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. And if he's not healthy, we're not going to we don't worry about him because he's down in the minor leagues. I mean, look, even Martin Perez is not somebody you're married to. It's 1 year at $5 million with a mutual option. If the young guys really perform, he wouldn't even be on the team halfway through the year. I mean, if all of a sudden these guys come out who are like young, and these young, hungry pitchers that have all this potential, and you start seeing them throwing gas and doing amazing things, and you're like, we got to get Perez out of the way because we just got too many young guys that are pitching well. He's not hard to move out of the way. He didn't cost you very much.
No.
So in the end, all Clevinger is just another arm that's there in case the young arms are not ready in spring. He's basically a backup plan. And I guess it's like, well, he's the devil, right? Like, what he is if he's healthy. So let's get him in here, see if he's healthy. If he still has what he has, we at least know what he is, and we can store him in the minors if he's willing to sit down there. Yeah,
or you can flip him before the end of spring training too. There's nothing that's saying that you got to flip somebody at a trade deadline. You can make something happen earlier on. I don't know. It's not a bad move. It's just like you said. You sit there and you go, but why him? And I think the only thing you can answer is, why not, I guess.
Dave Marin, the Sox nerd, puts all those tidbits up on the scoreboard at the rate, but he joins us here weekly on Sox in the Basement, and he's brought to you by the Village of Lamont. Want to experience a downtown with real history, great eats and drinks, and green spaces filled with adventure? Visit the Village of Lamont. Shop, dine, drink, explore, and check out the brand new Lamont Unlocked podcast going all over town and showing you why you need to visit Lamont at lamontdowntown.com. Nerd, what do you got for me?
Chris, let's make this yet another Sox Nerd prep session for the 2025 season, shall we? After Rojas and Slater the last couple of weeks, let's go with left-handed reliever Cam Boozer. You really have to hand it to this guy for sticking to it. This dude has bounced around. He attended 3 colleges and made 7 stops in the Twins chain, topping out at High A Fort Myers before retiring in 2017, mainly because of injuries. While working as a union carpenter in his native Seattle, Boozer discovered during pitching lessons he was giving, he could throw 96 miles an hour without pain. The independent Chicago Dogs liked what they saw and signed him. After brief stints in the D-backs organization and with the independent Lancaster Barnstormers, Boozer landed in the Boston organization, where he showed the Red Sox enough in Double and Triple A to earn a promotion to the show. Last season, Boozer was 2-3 with a 3.39 ERA and 1 save in 43 outings for the Bo Sox. One of those appearances, a scoreless 10th on June 9th at Guaranteed Rate Field, netted him his first and only MLB save. With ghost runner Sheets on second, Boozer whiffed DeJong and Vaughn and got Mendick to line out to end it as the Red Sox avoided a sweep. He's a great story. A great pitcher? Some of his numbers were good. He had fewer hits than innings pitched and more strikeouts than innings, but he needs to improve on 2 stats, which I love when it comes to relievers. Inherited runners scored. He was at 60%, well below the league average, and first batters faced, where that average was an alarming 390. But, Chris, as you and Ed have pointed out many times, the 2025 White Sox will be a platform for players like Boozer to continue to prove themselves or bounce back. Boozer reminds me of Jim Morris, whose comeback story was recounted in the Dennis Quaid movie The Rookie. Morris pitched briefly with the Sox Class A Sarasota affiliate in 1989. Frank Thomas also played on that team. And one more. When Cam Boozer makes his Sox debut, he will be the first Boozer to play for a Chicago team since Carlos scored 14 points and grabbed 11 rebounds for the Bulls in the 91-86 loss at Charlotte on April 16, 2014. Before I get to my zinger, I remind you that gems like these and long-form pieces are on my blog, which you can link to at soxinthebasement.com. By the way, I've started posting a daily random Sox list on my blog. Today I have a list of every spring training opening day starting pitcher since 1970. My zinger, in honor of the 20th anniversary of the World Champions, I'm going to zing frequently about that team, throwing out some gems you may not know about the 2005 Sox. Jeff Blum, love him. There is more to the Blummer than his 14th inning homer in Game 3 of the 05 World Series. For instance, Blum played for 2 division winners that season. He came to the Sox from the Padres, who would win the NL West, and Blum's 9 starts at first base were second to Paul Konerko's 145 that season. That's it, Chris. Probably more than you wanted to know about baseball Boozer, basketball Boozer, and the Blummer.
Let's talk about Paul Janish, and he's the player development guy. He's Chris Getz 2.0, another former Major League Baseball infielder who's in charge of development for the White Sox. Hopefully a little bit better results. But he gave an interview, right?
Yeah. Well, he sat down with David Larilla of Fangraphs a couple days ago, and they put out just a Q&A with him about how, what he sees as the director of player development and now a rejuvenated White Sox farm system, because the farm system is once again getting some pop because they've brought in prospects that now inhabit the top 100. And so, as a White Sox fan, we're back to a point where we're like looking at the rebuild and saying, well, yeah, we got some prospects in the top 100 of the pipeline. And then the question, of course, is going to be, are we really just that top heavy? It's those 5 guys and a barren wasteland of tumbleweeds and terrible pitching behind it. But, they sat down with Janish and asked him a few things. And it was, what I found was interesting was sort of the non-answers. They asked him what the job entails, right? As director of player development, what does he view the job as being? And he said, it's not about dealing with people. It's about dealing with systems, right? Trying to put people in the best position to seed includes the staff. You want to create a system that gives the players every resource and facilitates every need they might need or want. I do a lot of communicating with players to get their perspectives on what they're experiencing within our system. That's important. You have to take into account that they're the players and they're all different, right? It's not just run them through the line and hope everybody comes out good. It's paying attention to some of those details, some of the intricacies, and you're also dealing with both pitchers and position players. There are a lot of moving parts. So, that's kind of a stock answer, don't you think?
Well, I don't know. You see, that's the thing. I'm getting this with fresh ears because I didn't read the article, so you're kind of telling it to me, and I'm listening to what he said, and I get what you're saying. You're like, oh, he really didn't give any answers. On the other hand, one of the biggest complaints that I've always heard from other White Sox fans, I think we've made that complaint too, is the idea that there is no such thing as a White Sox way, except for when Kenny Williams thought it was like going in and spotting an athlete because he can pick out a good athlete just like
when
that.
the White Sox way was 1980s WWF.
Right. And then after that athlete comes in, they just have to stay healthy and you'll win, right? Like nothing bad has to happen. Everybody has to have a career year.
Everybody will look great on the poster, and it doesn't matter if they can actually swing a bat, catch a baseball, or do anything else.
And everybody has a career year. I mean, that's the White Sox way. That's why we won in 2005. It was like catching lightning in a bottle because everybody had the best year of their lives, and it just worked out. I mean, like I'll take it. But that was the White Sox way. And like you would see, and we talked about the Twins at the beginning of the show, and this is something I was always jealous of, and I would tell Joe about it when I would talk about it, is that the Twins had a system, that their guys came up and did things a certain way, that they all seemed to be very smart on the base paths, that they all seemed to be very good at fundamentals. At least back in the 90s and the early 2000s, that was something that they were known for. There was a Twins way. So I listened to that quote and I wonder to myself, is he just talking about the idea of establishing a White Sox system, a White Sox way? Even though they're individual players and they're going to do some things individually, there's going to be a structure now. And that's what I'm focusing on. Much like how Getz didn't get any money from Jerry, so he focused on the international stuff and he focused on the structure in the front office and he changed who reports to who and he moved some guys out and he moved some guys in and he kind of changed around things structurally because he couldn't actually just go out and build a team to compete this year. So is that what's going on with player development as well? Look, we've got to first build the base before we do anything else. And I don't really know who's going to work out of this group because I've really only been in charge of them for a short amount of time.
I think it's possible. And to your point about there being a way of doing things and establishing a base, I mean, it seems like what he's talking about here in the article is a lot of trying to give the players information and set them up for things. Because he talks about, ultimately we're trying to help guys understand what they're good at, what they are predisposed to being good at, and focusing on that while still trying to impact what they need to work on. We're making sure that they are operating biomechanically how their bodies want. And he's talking there about the pitchers, but he also mentioned that they're just ahead on what they can do with the pitchers, further ahead on what they can do with the pitchers than they are with the hitters. So he's sort of, kind of using that, I think, to demonstrate what you're just talking about there, which is how do you make these guys fundamentally sound and understand what they need to know to play baseball properly at the major league level while emphasizing what they're good at? Because that also, always seemed to be something that periodically we'd hear the White Sox do, right? Like everybody had to throw a cutter under the Don Cooper era. That was sort of not something that it was a one-trick pony, but like that was something that it seemed like every pitcher had in their arsenal. And there was a philosophy behind that, but it was also an actual physical thing. And you go back to remember when Walt Riniak was the hitting coach and everybody had to take their top hand off when they followed through, right? And you get that and it's like, okay, well, stuff like that, does that really work? Or does this philosophy make you feel a little bit better about things where they're sitting there saying, hey, look, take what a guy's really, really good at and emphasize it and then give him some tools around that to help build. And if you need to add a pitch to a pitcher's arsenal to help them succeed, great, but don't let them lose the fastball that got him here. Don't let them lose the slider that got him here. Because that's what I read into that. And I think, if you're going to develop a player, kind of how you have to do it, right? You have to let them do what comes natural and then give them something else, give them a couple of things else that helps them make it so that they can make it and play the game.
Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement.
Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found and always on soxinthebasement.com.